Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly chaotic, animal-filled American tall tale. We're looking at John Coley's story, All Grandpa's Fish. Now, on the surface, it's this whimsical story of a grandfather bonding with his granddaughter over a fantastic breakfast. We're talking pancakes, bacon, jelly biscuits, the whole shebang. But as we're going to see, it quickly transforms into one of the wildest, most absurdly populated animal adventures you will literally ever come across.
So our story starts with a central mystery. Why did Grandpa Tom really quit fishing? Young Mary is totally baffled by this. Her dad and uncle are heading out on the special crack of dawn fishing trip, but Grandpa Tom just stays behind. And what's actually really interesting about this is that Grandpa Tom is perfectly healthy. I mean, he's an outdoorsy guy, an avid hiker who chops firewood with a single swing of his axe. So why won't he cast a line? Well, when Mary finally asks him, he launches into this absolute jaw-dropper of a flashback about his very last fishing trip on his little wooden boat, the USS Kansas.
And let me tell you, that flashback kicks off an unbelievable chain of events. Just listen to the sheer volume of animals Grandpa Tom claims to have encountered. It's nuts. His story begins with a tornado sucking up his boat, and from there it's just pure escalating madness. We've got a Cairn Terrier flying through a whirlwind, a catfish the size of an economy car, a terrified red fox, a laughing rabbit, an angry bull, a gigantic blue ox, furious monkeys. I mean, the list just keeps going. It's a relentless barrage of creatures. To even begin to understand how he meets all these animals, we kind of have to trace his chaotic, high-speed journey. Basically, Grandpa's hook gets snagged by that massive catfish, and it drags him on this wild cross-country tour. They start in a big lake, shoot like a rocket into an irrigation ditch, crash through a pine forest, spin out in a cow pond, literally ski down train tracks, and finally plunge into a canal. And at every single stop on this bizarre map, Grandpa encounters a totally new set of creatures.
Now, what's so brilliant about this tall tale is exactly how the author blends the mundane with the completely fantastical. First, you have these perfectly ordinary, albeit very misplaced, animals. Sure, being dragged through a canal crate full of wet hens and roosters, or passing a barge where monkeys are losing their bananas, is definitely weird, but the animals themselves are real, right? But then, the story escalates into pure logic-defying absurdity. We're talking beasts like a mountain lion wearing a riding saddle, or a living, breathing rattlesnake being swung around like a lasso. Let's actually break down some of these wild encounters.
So it all kicks off with his massive beast. Grandpa Tom says catfish grow to fit their environment, and since he landed in a huge lake, this fish was, well, the size of an economy car. But the craziest part? There was a cowgirl riding it like a horse, yelling Yahoo while bouncing in and out of the water. Honestly, Grandpa only gets hooked to the thing because the cowgirl's reins snap, sending her splashing into the lake, while her scaly steed just takes off with Grandpa's line.
Dragged into an irrigation ditch at breakneck speeds, Grandpa gets flung into this lush patch of vegetation. Turns out to be a briar patch. And who does he meet? Two pairs of terrified eyes staring right back at him. It's a red fox and a bear, both completely tangled up and afraid to move. And then, to add insult to injury, this little rabbit hops by, stops, and actually laughs at them all before darting away.
Next up, the catfish jumps right into a cow pond. Grandpa lands on a hay bale and immediately ruins a local bull's dinner. The bull is furious. It's stamping, it's snorting, it's getting ready to charge. But suddenly, the bull just gets spooked and runs away. Why? Well, because right behind Grandpa is a gigantic ox. It's so black that it actually looks blue, and it's wearing this shiny collar tag that simply reads, Babe.
A little later, after surviving a literal train encounter, Grandpa is dragged into a canal. He's pulled through crates of chickens and lands straight in a garbage barge. Just when he thinks he absolutely cannot take the smell, he's yanked into the air by another fisherman. He suddenly finds himself suspended between his giant catfish and a massive clipper ship. And holding the rod is the biggest sea captain Grandpa's ever seen, who, casually has an octopus hanging around his neck like a pet.
Finally, this chaotic ride brings Grandpa full circle back to the lake for the ultimate climax. Standing right there on the shore is a mysterious cowboy. But his horse is actually a gargantuan mountain lion strapped with a riding saddle. And the rope in his hand? It's a living rattlesnake. The cowboy throws the snake with perfect aerodynamic precision, and the snake literally ties its own head into a perfect square knot around Grandpa's ankle. I mean, it's the ultimate creepy living lariat.
Okay, let's just pause for a second. We really need to ask a critical question here. Are these just random, absurd animals thrown into a blender by the author to make a funny story? I mean, it's super easy to think Grandpa Tom is just spouting absolute nonsense. But what if this bizarre menagerie actually has a deeper, very specific cultural meaning?
And that brings us to the brilliant twist hidden in the author's notes at the very end of the text. Every single one of these weird, fantastical animals Grandpa encountered is actually a legendary creature pulled straight out of American folklore. John Coley didn't just invent random beasts. He wove this incredible tapestry of classic American myths right under our noses. Let's look a little closer at exactly who these creatures belong to. First up, that cowgirl at the beginning and the end of the story wrangling those giant catfish, that is Slewfoot Sue. According to the text notes, she was an ambitious, legendary cowgirl representing the wild, exaggerated myths of the American frontier. And her absolute favorite mode of transportation was giant catfish. She's also super famous for insisting on riding the horse Widowmaker. When she did, she wore a bustle, and the extra bounce literally launched her all the way to the moon.
Now, how about that strange scene back in the irrigation ditch? The laughing rabbit, the terrified fox, and the bear stuck in the briars. Well, those are Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear. The author notes explain these are classic characters popularized by Joel Chandler Harris's Uncle Remus tales from around the turn of the century. They are deeply rooted in antebellum trickster stories, where Brer Rabbit constantly uses his wits to outsmart stronger predator animals, which perfectly explains why he's laughing his head off while they are helplessly trapped in the briar patch.
And what about the gigantic blue ox named Babe? That colossal beast belonged to none other than Paul Bunyan. Remember that massive lumberjack who chopped down Grandpa's pine tree in a single swing earlier in the story? That was Paul. The lore says he found the abandoned ox during the winter of the blue snow, which is a detail that just perfectly captures the larger-than-life whimsy of American lumberjack myths. The ox was just as blue as the snow and grew to incredible, landscape-altering sizes right alongside the legendary woodsman.
Then there's the canal captain with the octopus necktie. That was Alfred Boltop's Stormalong. The text reveals Stormalong was a legendary figure from classic American maritime tall tales, basically a sailor so massive his clipper ship needed hinged masts just to fit under bridges. He apparently missed the sea so much during a retirement to Utah that his tears created the Great Salt Lake. And yes, his absolute best friend in the whole world was an octopus.
Finally, we have the mysterious cowboy at the lake. That was Pecos Bill, the original legendary cowboy who totally embodies the rugged independence of the Wild West mythos. The text notes detail that Bill was actually raised by coyotes, which kind of explains his completely unorthodox gear. He befriended a cougar to use as a horse and a rattlesnake to use as his lariat, long before he even invented the traditional rope lasso. So that snake tying a perfect square knot around Grandpa's ankle? That's pure Pecos Bill magic.
So the really crucial point here is that Grandpa Tom has just spun this epic mythological odyssey featuring almost every major animal from American tall tales. Mary is sitting there listening to all this, and she correctly deduces that it's completely made up. So she asks him again, why did he really quit? Well, prepare yourself because we are doing a hard pivot right back to reality. Here is the actual reason. 25 cents. Yep. Grandpa Tom delivers this deadpan punchline. After fabricating all that magnificent folkloric chaos, the tornadoes, the blue oxen, the giant catfish, the truth is entirely mundane. He went to the department store to renew his license, saw the price had gone up by a single quarter, got deeply offended by the ripoff, complained they were probably going to tax our oars next, and just stubbornly boycotted fishing forever. I mean, it is absolutely the most stereotypically grumpy grandpa reason imaginable.
But wait. Just as we think the magic is totally gone, John Coley hits us with this incredible epilogue twist. Mary's dad and uncle returned from their fishing trip completely empty-handed, except they caught a pair of silver slippers in the river. Suddenly, a hot air balloon drifts down carrying an old man, a young lady, and a little Cairn Terrier. The men return the silver slippers to the girl, and the balloon floats away over a rainbow on a completely rainless day. So Grandpa Tom wasn't entirely lying. Dorothy, Toto, and the magic of Oz were right there in their time all along, proving that magic might just actually exist at the very edges of reality.
And that brings us to the end of today's Explainer. John Coley's story is a total masterclass in hiding cultural artifacts in plain sight, all cleverly disguised as the ramblings of an eccentric grandfather. So here's a thought to leave you with. Think about the exaggerated stories your own relatives tell. What hidden legends, folklore, or historical myths are lurking inside your own family's tall tales? You might just find your own Slewfoot Sue or Babe the Blue Ox if you listen closely enough. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring.